Hey, my name's Burt, and this is my story. Pretty much is about 2011. I was pretty down in the dumps around that time. I was a pretty bad addict. I was actually doing some time in jail. I was pretty out of my mind. I was trying to fight everybody in the jail cell and really didn't know where my life was going at that moment. And it was so bad that I made all the other inmates really uncomfortable, so the jail bailiff brought me down the hallway and put me in another room, and I was still going pretty crazy. And I remember I sat down in the bunk and it was pitch black in there except for the little light on the mail slot that they bring the tray in through. And I remember the light shining through the hallway on a piece of paper. And I picked up the piece of paper and it was the faith section in the newspaper. And at that moment I sat down on the bunk and I was scared and lonely. I just felt the Holy Spirit just come on me. It was kind of like I was naked and Jesus just cloaked me right there, and all my anxieties and everything just kind of melted away. And I asked the bailiff for a Bible, and that's pretty much how my relationship with Jesus started. A couple months later, I went to Cass County Jail. I was in there one night. It was probably around midnight, something like that, and you know, you can hear the cell blocks opening down the hall. So I'm looking at everybody like, hey, we got somebody new coming down the hallway. Who is it? It's our buddy Dan. Comes walking in the pod, and I could tell he's had a pretty rough night. And he's pacing back and forth. And he finally sits down in front of my bunk, and I was like, hey man, you don't have to sit down right there. He said, I just told him, come up and sit on the top bunk, put your stuff up here, and that's where he stayed for the next couple months. And you know, I was reading the Bible, and yeah, Dan, I'd read to Dan too. We'd all hang out, we'd just read and, you know, try to make sense of a bad situation, really. And then some other guys would sit down next to me and they'd want to hear it, so I'd read it out loud to them, and then maybe they were just lost too and they just wanted some comforting words. Eventually it turned into just me reading out loud to everybody. It came to the point where they didn't have a choice because I was reading it out loud anyway, so if they didn't want to hear it, they just had to close their ears. But everybody was listening. In the pod that we were at, there was 24 cell block on the bottom, there's a 24 cell block on top, so even the people up top would lean on the gate and listen to it. So it was a pretty cool experience. And at this point, I'm pretty much like a prodigal again. I've been found at that moment 10, 11 years later, and I got back into the world. You know, I started eating up from the tree of knowledge, and I kind of slowly dipped back into that lifestyle. I go over to Dan's house, and he's telling me about all these great things that just happened in his life. And he starts telling me about how Jesus came and pretty much brought him to his knees and is really changing his life around. I was like, man, that was like the last thing I was expecting to hear from him. So at that moment, I was ready, and I was probably the best I've ever been financially and with me and my wife, but spiritually, emotionally, I was a wreck, honestly. So pretty much I started going to church like Dan invited me on his bunk here at Real Life, and God's really came into my life these last few months. He's got me quit drinking, quit smoking, starting running a sober life, praying a lot more. Me and my kids coming up to church, they love it. It's been real great. Just looking forward to more opportunities that he's got in front of me. I was just tired of squandering all those blessings that he's bestowed upon me, you know. You look back at all the things you have, and it's like, man, it wouldn't be nothing without him. If you have anxiety about asking somebody, just holding that anxiety in, it's just gonna eat you up. So I just openly ask. No, what they're gonna say is no. So just take that leap of faith, and if it's on your mind, just ask it. And that's how I was brought to Jesus, and I'm inviting you to bring someone.